Okay, so what we are going to do today? So today we will try and understand what are the different options through which we can manage the Azure platform. So Microsoft Azure platform can be managed via different methods. Okay, so far we have been managing it using the graphical user interface. So within the graphical user interface, there are two major options. One, you can access it through the web browser, so which is the most common used method. So that is where we have been spending most of our time. And then we also have a desktop application through which we can install on our Windows operating system or the Windows operating system, and we can manage it. And even we have an option called mobile application. You can install the same Microsoft Azure app on your mobile device, and then you can manage it. And there are many other third party applications that are available on the internet. And when we discussed certain classes like storage account and some of the databases and stuff, though there are many different tools that are available from the marketplace or from the third party through which we can able to manage it. Now today's focus will be more around the command line options. See, the command line options are very useful when it comes to automation or scripting, right? See, these days, whenever when you want to be part of a team, cloud management, cloud support team, see, for the cloud operations engineer, it is okay that you manage the entire environment using the portal, and then you do some patching or monitoring or alerting configurations and so on. But then if you want to be a part of a platform reliability engineering team or a cloud reliability team or a site reliability engineer role, then comes the challenge where you have to go and uh, then you have to kind of find out different options on which can be used for automating your environment. So definitely, like, automation is one of the important core element for a DevOps engineer or for a site reliability engineer, where they have to automate the environment, right? So when I say automate, so there are a lot of tasks which are manual manually done. So the manual tasks we need to identify. So these are all called as toil, whatever we are doing on a regular basis. So the manual tasks are referred as toil in DevOps terms, or in the reliability engineer term. And in order to reduce the toil, um, we need to perform automation of the manual tasks. So now this automation can be done via various options in Azure platform. Either you can use Microsoft Azure command line, and then you can use Microsoft Azure PowerShell option. And Microsoft has given you one more interesting option called Cloud Shell, which is part of your Azure. And then you also have various other tools through which you can integrate and manage. So the other day we were seeing that Visual Studio and different tool sets, they also have options to manage your environment directly from the developer tool also. So if in case you want to do some automation and stuff, you can definitely do that. So here, yeah, just give a second. I was trying to log into my account. 1 second. Just a second, guys. Give me a second. I'm just trying to log in a different machine where I want to show you how to install Azure CLI, Azure PowerShell, and so on. So I'll just authenticate and let's complete this. Okay, then sorry, we will continue. So I just want to ensure that we can install and manage different stuffs from another machine. See, generally, like even in our own systems, we might have a lot of restrictions and policies enforced into a system. So we might not be able to do a lot of activities from the command line or install any additional tools. So I've just made a system ready to show the demo. Okay, so for command line, we have a variety of options. You can use Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio Editor. You can use Cloud Shell, PowerShell, Azure CLI. And when it comes to DevOps, mostly it is all template driven, right? When I say template driven, nowadays infrastructure is provisioned as a code, right? So earlier, if there is a business requirement, they come to application owner, they kind of create the application as a code, and then we used to deploy it. Okay, so the same practice, what is what the DevOps team is currently following. So if there is a new infrastructure that needs to be provisioned, so we are writing a template in a format of a code, which mean how we write a particular application code, and then we deploy it using the template. It is template driven. So now Microsoft Azure has got ARM templates and one more option called Bicep. So you can also use third-party tools like Terraform to deploy the environment infrastructure using the code or using the template. So template is more easy to recreate, or it is mainly emphasizing on your automation and making the deployment much easier. So we'll come to the template part little later, but for now, so command line options are more appropriate when it comes to scripting, and scripting definitely it helps with reducing the toil, which is nothing but your automation. So automation is very vital when it comes to a reliability engineer role or a DevOps engineer role. So now so let's understand what are the different options and what are the different methods through which we can manage the Azure platform. Especially we will focus on the automation options around the command line stuff. Now mostly the customers, they started preferring Cloud Shell, but over the years, last 10 years, we have been mostly using Azure Shell and Azure PowerShell, which is still being used in many of the organization, but they are trying to move around Cloud Shell for a variety of reasons. The reasons are going to be listed now. Okay, so Cloud Shell is Microsoft Azure native tool, or it is a native method through which you can manage Azure platform. So just like your portal, so your Azure environment can be managed from the Bash shell or PowerShell from the browser itself. So if you go to the browser, you can just type shell.azure.com, which will open up the complete screen with the PowerShell or the Bash shell by default. So now, see, in order to have the Cloud Shell activated, you need to have two things. One, you should have an active subscription, and you need to have a storage account to store whatever activities you are performing. So this particular Azure Cloud Shell, it is not a permanent system. Instead, it is a temporary virtual machine that Microsoft Azure provisions for you. Okay, and then after some time, this particular system will be deprovisioned if you're not actively using it. So there is a 20 minutes timeout until which it will be still active, okay, irrespective of your usage. But after that, it will start timeout and then it will deprovision it. Now, in order for your work to persist on this particular system, so generally what Microsoft suggests is go and create a storage account, and then within that storage account you will have a file share created for maybe around 5 GB. And then if in case you need more space, you can expand it. But then for now, we need to create a storage account in order for your work, whatever commands you're executing or whatever scripts you're writing, you need to keep that. You need to preserve that from day-to-day activities, right? So tomorrow you might continue on certain things which is not complete today. So you need some storage space where you can store your scripts, outputs, logs, and so on. So you need to create a storage account for that. And then let's also do that. So we need an active subscription. And if you go to advanced settings, you might also see that which region you want to work and all those stuff. Okay, so if you want to change the region, or if you want to use a different resource group, you can also change it. But for now, let me go to the basic settings option. Or if I just want to hide the advanced settings, so it will automatically create a storage account, and then it will use the default name. But then if you want to have your own name for the storage account, resource group, and the file share, you do have the option. Okay, you can go and edit it by going into the advanced settings. Option 2, select the subscription, resource group, storage account, region, and then the file share name. So you can select all these options. If in case you want to selectively activate for a subscription, for a resource group, for a particular storage account, you can select it. Or else if you want to default it, you can just leave it as default by selecting the basic option. So now what makes Cloud Shell interesting is that it is a browser based management, or a browser based shell option. So that means you don't have to install anything on your local machine. Don't have to install any executable or installable on your local system. So now, since it gives you a browser based shell option, it is an integrated embedded terminal. Okay, and this integrated embedded terminal, see, some of you might be having experience in Linux, some of you might be working on Windows. So now for both of the skilled people on Windows and Linux, okay, so you have option to either choose Bash or PowerShell. Okay, so it gives you two options. So I'll show you that. So you can either work on PowerShell terminal or you can work on Bash terminal. It gives you option to switch between these two. Okay, now let's go and check. So it has created a connection now. So if I go to the leftmost top, it gives me option to switch between Bash shell and PowerShell. And if I just switch to PowerShell, it just asks as a confirmation. So it just want to switch. Okay, so whatever running process in Azure Bash session will go in the background. Okay, it will still continue to run until it will complete. So you can switch between the two different mode, the sessions. Okay, you can switch from one another. Okay, so that is another interesting thing that it will continue to run in the background, whatever activities you have been doing. Okay, now let's just close this. Okay, fine. So now let's go and look at this. Okay, so in this particular mode, you can work on any different tools or any different stuff, because this particular editor or this particular Cloud Shell or Azure Cloud Shell, it comes with all the different tool sets by default. See, if you talk about different shells, for example, Bash is the default shell. But if in case you want to work on Z shell or uh, just a normal shell, you have options. Those are all pre-installed. Even if you want to work on Azure command line or code editors, so all these stuffs are enabled by default. So if I just say Azure hyphen hyphen version. So this is the Azure command line tool version which I'm checking. So it is already pre-installed on this particular system. And you can see even the Python libraries, the Python tool is also pre-installed. And if I go and check code, even the Visual Studio Code is enabled by default. It is installed and you can start working on them right away. So you don't have to really spend time in installing these tools. So not just these stuff, you have a variety of tools like MySQL client or PostgreSQL client in order to connect the database. Even if you want to work on your Kubernetes and so on, all those stuffs are pre-installed. Okay, just let me just show you that. So your kubectl and see it connects you to all the options. The Kubernetes control tool is there, and if you want to use MySQL or PostgreSQL or any tools for that matter, even Terraform is pre-installed, Ansible is pre-installed, Chef, Puppet. So whatever tool that you want to work, not just the connection tools, even the programming languages like PowerShell, Python, Node.js, Java, Go, .NET Core, all these applications, tools, and then the management client are pre-installed in your Cloud Shell. So that is the biggest advantage. Tools, programming languages. When I say tools, not just the client tools, even some of the tools that you want to manage, Azure CLI or Helm package, all these are pre-installed. Okay, just to list some most commonly used ones these days. So Kubernetes management, MySQL client, and then Ansible, Terraform, even Chef Puppet for that matter, it is also available. It is all pre-installed. You don't have to install anything. Visual Studio Code. So there are hundreds of tools that are already pre-installed on this system, on this Cloud Shell, and you can start utilizing them, using them right after you load this particular thing. So in order to load this Cloud Shell, there are two options. One, you can directly go and type portal.azure.com/cloud shell, or else if you want to work in parallel, okay, with your graphical user interface, what you can do is you can just click on the option here, go to the portal.azure.com, and if you click on this icon next to your search bar on the top, it opens up the Cloud Shell in parallel. So you can work in GUI as well as you can see some of the logs, activities on the graphical user interface along with your command line option here on the bottom. So you can work in a parallel session, or you can, if you want to focus on the shell mode and continue to work, you can also work it in a full screen mode. So there are two options. You can just click on the Cloud Shell just next to your search icon and you can work in parallel, or you can just have a separate console opened up for working on the Cloud Shell. Now let us check what exactly is the operating system that they are providing. It's some time now since I have worked on this particular latest cloud. Mostly it is okay. So they are using Mariner version. So let's see. You name Linux sandbox Microsoft. Okay, Microsoft Linux. So they used to provide Ubuntu earlier, but then looks like now they are providing Microsoft Linux as an operating system. Earlier they used to provide Ubuntu server as a kind of Dockerized container for this Cloud Shell, but now they have completely changed into a Microsoft-based Linux sandbox environment, and this is coming as a free of cost for you. Okay, so there is no cost for this operating system and it is free of cost. Okay, let me just copy this, and there is no, when you get something for free of cost, obviously there is no cost, no SLA, Okay, this is the tool that they are providing, and you can just check whatever details you want to have. Okay, and you know that PowerShell is now supported on Linux also. Earlier PowerShell was intended only for Microsoft when it was branded as Windows PowerShell, but now they have completely changed the branding, and now Microsoft PowerShell, it works on Linux, Mac, as well as Windows. So PowerShell is also available by default. So this particular Cloud Shell is free of cost. The operating system that you get, there is no SLA for that. But then the Azure storage account, whatever you are creating, the file share that you have created, that actually adds up a cost. Okay, so whatever content you are sharing, storing, that you have to pay for it, and it is again, it has a quota limit applied by default. So if you go to that storage account which we created for the Cloud Shell, so you will be able to identify that there is a file share created, and that file share has got a quota applied. So this is the Cloud Shell storage account that we have got. And if I go to the containers, or sorry, file shares, you can see that it has got a file share created, and by default it will also have a quota applied. So if I just click on edit quota, you can see that they have, by default they have set a 6 GB quota for this particular file share, and the image that where we are working, it will be stored inside this as a .img file. Okay, if in case you want to increase it, you can just go and change the quota. Okay, so you can see that for the clouds and console, there is a img file which is 5 GB in size. So by default, there is a quota applied for 6 GB, and the image that you get is 5 GB. Default quota size is 6 GB. And then the image that we are using for the container, for the Microsoft Linux container, it is 5 GB in capacity, and whatever content you are creating, whatever the working data, it will be stored in that particular image file. And whenever you are launching a session again, then the terminal will pick up the files from there, and you can continue to work on it. So there is a 20 minutes timeout limit before which, so you have to actively working on it, or if you want to do something, you can run some commands or run some batch file scripts so that the terminal is active. So if the terminal is inactive for 20 minutes, the container will be recreated. Okay, if you want the same container to be used, see, you don't have to really worry, because your working files, the data, the directory is actually coming from the file share, so that data will still persist. Only thing is the container might be newly created. So you don't have to have a separate downloadable. Okay, you can just directly um, launch it from the browser itself, either from the portal.azure.com, or you can directly launch shell.azure.com in order to log into this Cloud Shell. Now, as I told you, there are two different shells that are provided. Okay, so Windows and Linux. So as most of you know, Windows PowerShell, it is comparatively a newer option. It is mostly used by the Windows administrator, and so this has been developed using C sharp, right? I think around 2005 or late 2005 or 2006 time is when this particular shell came in, and we started using it. And this is developed using C sharp language, C sharp programming. Whereas the earlier one, the Bash or the Bash shell, it was developed using C program, right? It is there in the market since late 1980s, or I would say we are using this Bash since mid 80s itself. So it is almost there in the market for 30 to 40 years now, the Bash shell. So mostly the Bash shell is based on C program. So in C program, generally whatever you want to create or handle, it is considered as a string. Whereas the C sharp program, it is again working like an objects, which is more common nowadays, right? Even in your .NET framework, even the Windows PowerShell, it has very much, it has got a very good compatibility with your .NET framework, and whatever you are creating, it can be considered as an object, and it works well with the latest trending stuff. Whereas if you are stuck with Bash shell and you want to do a lot of stuffs, then I think in Microsoft Azure you can do a lot of stuffs from the PowerShell, considering that It is latest, and it has got a lot of commandlets and modules purpose built for managing Azure platform. But mostly, like when it comes to reducing the toil, reducing the manual work, both of the tools can help you with reducing the manual effort. There is not much difference, but little additional options are available in PowerShell, considering that it is native to Microsoft, and they give you a lot of readily available modules which you can leverage. Whereas in the Bash shell, you might have to spend time in creating some additional modules and stuff in order for things to work. Okay, so I mean, there is no preference, or I'm not inclining towards any of the method. So if you're good in Linux, you can continue to use Bash shell. Whereas if you are familiar with PowerShell, you can utilize it. So it's up to you on which one to use. So this particular, even though it is a Microsoft Linux, okay, it supports all the different commands and stuff, whatever you generally use, right, in your Linux. So currently it is showing that the location from where the drive or where the content is coming from. So it is telling us there is a folder in your file share, and that is where the contents are stored. Okay, so it is referring to this particular location, the cloud drive folder, and within that we have the image. So it is pointing out to the cloud console or the cloud drive from where you are seeing the content. Where exactly? Here. Okay, so ls, and if I just go to the Microsoft folder, okay, and just give an ls, you can see that it has got some installables. Let me come back one bit and then go to cloud drive. Okay, so here is where your contents are getting stored by default. So whenever you log in, you are connected to the file share by default, and whatever command you are familiar with, your VI command, uh, or if you are familiar with nano command, or any editor for that matter, Emacs, or if you're familiar with the code editor also, every single tools are pre-installed. Okay, so that's the beauty of this particular tool, Cloud Shell. So you can work on any editor of your choice. If you want to edit some files or edit some scripts, so you can use VI, Nano, Emacs, Visual Studio Code, any editor, and you have the option to connect to the database from here itself. And if you want to test your application, or if you want to do some if you want to write a code, infrastructure as a code using Terraform or Python, you can also do it from this same shell. Okay, so it's an interesting option where you have all the different tools. Like if you are a person who want to develop a package, even the make command or the maven tool, all these are pre-installed. Okay, let me show you that. So be it Python installer or maven, sorry, I'm not sure if maven is there, but then I thought it used to be there. Okay, let me just check the command. Okay, but then npm is also used for building the packages, right? So a lot of the build tools, a lot of the editors, the SQL client or the tools utilities, all are pre-installed. Even if you want to do some copy file copies or stuff, even those are all pre-installed. Azure copy command or AZ copy tool is pre-installed here. Even the blob transfer is also available, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, even if you want to transfer, download some files and upload some files, or if you want to sync two different storage account, so the blob transfer, Azure file copy, all these tools, even if you want to check in some code from GitHub, you can completely work on this particular portal as a DevOps admin, as a reliability engineer. You don't need any other separate system or tools, and you don't have to install any tool that the industry is currently using. Okay, so that's the message here. Okay, so if you are a DevOps engineer or a site reliability engineer, whatever the tools that you generally need to edit the configuration file, mostly like we use VI, Nano, Emacs, or Visual Studio Code are generally used. So that is pre-installed. And generally in DevOps, you know, right, for configuration management, we are currently using Ansible, and for infrastructure as a code, we generally use Terraform, and generally we use JIT for connecting to the package, or we use Python for some scripting and so on. So all these are pre-installed. And if your containers are running on Kubernetes or containerized platform, so the Docker or the kubectl command, it's also available. I'm just listing the popular tools. Even if your organization is using Chef Puppet, those clients are also pre-installed on this particular platform. And mostly we might want to do a file transfer to Azure storage account or from one account to another account. So the robo copy or the Azure copy, the the blob transfer, the blob exfer, these tools are also pre-installed. If you want to upload, download some files to Azure storage account in order to do some automation, or if you want to get some scripts downloaded in Azure storage account, so you have the Azure copy and blob transfer pre-installed. Now, when you want to use this cloud shell, that time only Microsoft provisions that particular server. There is a couple of minutes delay, okay, in order to deploy that container. Within a minute or two, you will get a new session created, and this particular machine is a temporary machine, okay, and it gets created, this temporary system. In fact, it is a container, okay, so temporary container gets created whenever when you invoke shell.azure.com, or when you go and click on that icon on the top, cloud shell, it will open up a new temporary system. And this new temporary system is per user basis, or it's a per session basis for each and every user, whoever is invoking it or whoever is logging it. And as I told you, you get a Azure file share where you mount it, and you can work on both bash and PowerShell mode, and it is assigned per user account. Okay, so each and every user account will get a separate container which is launched, which is free of cost, and you can work and you will be able to do whatever you are familiar with. Even all the Linux command that generally works, you can work it. See, for example, if I want to create a folder for app automation 1, and I can just create one folder, and then if I want to create one more folder for storing scripts or whatever, so all these commands folders, or if you want to remove certain things, you can just remove whatever commands from the Linux or from the Windows, everything will work. Okay, if you switch on to the PowerShell, if you are familiar with all the Linux PowerShell, sorry, Windows PowerShell commandlets, all the commandlets will execute. Now, in order to effectively manage your environment from the Cloud Shell, you need to be familiar with two important options. Number one is Azure CLI, and the other option is Azure PowerShell. So we will get to understand both these options first, and then we will come and execute some of the content from the Cloud Shell. Now, coming back to the options, so as I told you, so these are all the most commonly used option, and Cloud Shell is very popular, getting popular these days, because it gives you all the tools, utilities needed for a DevOps engineer and a reliability engineer to manage the cloud. Now, within that, in order to write an automation program, or in order to write a script, it has dependency on either Azure PowerShell or Azure command line. So you need to be familiar with either of these one. So we will try to understand both the options and what are the different methods to utilize them or use them, okay, one by one. So Azure CLI, okay, it was initially developed primarily for Microsoft, but then now it is a cross-platform tool. Okay, so earlier it was not available for all the different OS platform and flavors, but now it is a cross-platform tool. It's a command line tool. You can install it on Windows, Linux, Mac. Okay, I'm not sure about the other operating system. Even you can use it on a Windows subsystem for Linux. You don't have to really have a separate Linux machine. Even you can enable WSL, Windows subsystem for Linux, on your Windows operating system, and you can run it. Even it works on, you can have it on Docker also. So now many of you might have a confusion. So whether Azure command line is a replacement for PowerShell, or whether PowerShell is a replacement for Azure CLI. No, mostly these are all alternative options to start with, but then it complements each other. Okay, some situations can be easily dealt with Azure CLI. Some situations you can easily deal using PowerShell commandlets. Whenever the PowerShell commandlets are lacking some option, you can use Azure CLI. So it's a complementary tool, or it's like Azure PowerShell and Azure CLI complements each other, and you cannot consider them as a replacement. Okay, let's see what is the current PowerShell, sorry, what is the current Azure CLI version that we are using. So with this particular shell, you will get all the latest version available in the Microsoft Linux operating system. Currently, I could see 2.54 is the latest option on this particular Cloud Shell. But if you want this tool to be installed on your local machine, any tool that you want from Microsoft, you have to go to azure.microsoft.com/downloads. So this is where you get all the downloadables related to Microsoft Azure. So in this particular portal, you get all the software development kit, you get all the tools that you need to manage Azure, Microsoft Azure platform and the services. Now, if you look at here, these are the different tools that are available. And the very first one is the Azure CLI. And if I want to install this, you can just directly go here, and then based on your operating system, it has got both 32-bit and 64-bit installable, and you get options to install it on Mac, Linux, and Windows. All three are available, and even you can run it on a Docker container, as I told you, and you can run it on a Azure Cloud Shell. I am already showing it here, right? So in my Azure Cloud Shell, I'm already seeing it. It is pre-installed and it is available. I don't have to install it rather on my Azure Cloud Shell. Now, this is the latest version, 2.5.4, and if I want to install it on my system, it supports different flavors of Linux, and you can also install it on Windows subsystem for Linux. And if I want to install it on Microsoft Windows, so it gives me option where they give a Microsoft installer package, so you can download either of the versions, 32-bit or 64-bit. You have MSI, you have MSI with PowerShell, or you can also, if you want to create a package for your operating systems in your golden image, Microsoft also provides you the Windows Package Manager. So now you have either you can run it on 32-bit or 64-bit. So if I just install it, I just have to download by clicking the link, and there is not much options to choose from. You can just directly go with next installation after you download it. So once after you download it, you can just directly double click on that. It gives you the option, and there is not much space requirement and so on. So once after you install it, okay, so you can just directly go to your command line. Okay, go to your command prompt, or you can even use your PowerShell also, if in case you want to use. It works on both command line as well as on your PowerShell. So generally try to run with administrative credentials. Okay, so let's try this. So once after you install it, you will be able to find what is the latest version that is installed on this particular system. So it is also having the same 2.54 version, and whatever commands that we are going to execute, it will be the same. Okay, so let's do one thing. Now comes the interesting question: how do I learn this, or what is the easiest method to make ourselves familiar with this Azure command line tools, right? So earlier we have to practice the commands by running each of the stuff, but now Microsoft has given you a much better option. I'll come to that part. So in some customer environment, you might still have the older version. We used to have version 1. Okay, some customer environments are still having that, but then we should try and insist them to move to the newer version. So Azure CLI version 1 was developed using node.js. You know, right, currently most of the automation, or when people talk about scripting or automation, they always talk about Python. Okay, so what Microsoft did is the version 2. So this is the major version which I'm talking about. So Azure CLI, so you used to have version 1 earlier. Now you have a major version 2, and whatever the numbers here, this is a minor version, and the last one is a patch version. So any tools, if you talk about version, it has got three different stuff: major dot minor dot the patch release. So I'm talking about the major release. We used to have version 1, which was developed using Node.js, and right, it was released at the time of Azure Service Manager. But it does work with Azure Resource Manager also. But then when Azure Resource Manager was launched, they completely changed uh, the tool that they used for developing the command line utility, or the tool that you are using. So it is developed based on Python, so it has got a lot of advantages compared to the node.js. So if you look at here, even the Python tool also gets installed along with that. You can see that it has got the Python libraries as well. Okay, so Python gets automatically installed along with your Azure command line tool installation. Okay, so now coming to Azure command line tool, it gives you easier way of working with your system. Okay, so if you want to log in, you just have to give az/login from your system. Okay, and then it will prompt you few options. So it will take you to the web browser, and from the web browser you can just directly log in with the credential that you want to use. And there is another method. You can just say az/login --use device code. So what it will do is it will generate a code, and you can just copy this particular link. Okay, and then you can enter that link in your web browser, and it will ask for the code, and the code is available. When you use that command, you will be able to copy the code and enter it. You will be able to log in. So you can log in from your command line using this option, or what you can do is, see, once after you log in, sometimes some accounts might have multiple subscription, multiple Azure tenant, and so on. So here I could see that it is showing me the tenant ID and so on. But sometimes you might have to go and enter the tenant ID specifically. So where do I find the tenant ID? So go to your Azure Active Directory. Currently it is called as Microsoft Entra. Here you can get the tenant ID. If you want to specifically log into a particular subscription or tenant, you can also get that details and you can log in. Now you are logged in to the Azure command line, and from here on you can start doing whatever activities you want from the command line. And if you want to find out the command, for example, let's say I want to find the commands that has got VM in it. Okay, it will list down all the different example that has got okay, so what they say is, in my system, in my local machine, I'm using a older version, and they are saying there are 3 higher versions available. Let me check what is the version that is available on my local machine. See, I'm using 2.43. Okay, I installed way back in, think last year I installed in October, but then okay, let's minimize this. Let's use the latest version. Okay, so you can use the browser, but for now let's practice it from the command prompt, and then we will move on to the Cloud Shell. Okay, let me just have a little more. I think 20 should be okay. Fine. So let me clear. So if you want to find the list of commands that has got virtual machine VM, so it will list down these different things. It says the VM word is only available in this command. For example, if I want to find Azure find virtual machine, so it will list down all the commands that has got virtual machine in it. So if I want to get a virtual machine, or if I want to work on a particular thing, it gives you some examples. But then let's say Azure find network. Okay, you can see that it is giving all the commands that has got the word network in it. If I want to create a Bastion system, or if I want to create a batch account, it gives me the commands that has got network in it. So Azure find, AZ find is a very important command that you can use. And as I told you, if you want to log in, you just have to just say AZ login. And if you want to log in using the device code, you can just say -device code. Or if you want to directly log in using the browser console, you can just leave Azure login, and it will take you to the browser console. And here, if you want to check the version, you can just say AZ. AZ is the command for Azure command line. Okay, so this is the command. AZ is the command for Azure command line. And if you want to find something, I already mentioned AZ find. If you want to find the commands with virtual machine or VM, it just lists you all the examples of that. And if you want to create a virtual machine, or if you want to manage the virtual machine, so it is pretty easy and straightforward. There is nothing to memorize. Okay, you just say AZ and then followed by virtual machine. Or if you want to just find out the list of options, you can just say slash question mark. It will list down what are the different options that are available with AZ. Okay, let's say it's misspelled. Okay, let me just show you one more thing. Hyphen interactive method. Let's see if that works. Okay, fine. With the latest version, I think you need not use any hyphen. Okay, so the earlier version we used to have hyphen stuff, but now you can just directly log in. See, this interactive method is the most easiest method through which you will be able to manage Microsoft Azure platform in an interactive way. You don't have to memorize anything. Nothing has to be memorized. So they are asking me whatever the commands that we are executing or whatever the output we are getting. They are asking us whether you want to send the telemetry. So whatever the errors, the logs, they won't take any personal identifiable information or any critical information from your system. So this is mainly to improve the way Microsoft is providing their tools and utilities. So if you want to send the telemetry, you can send it. But then if you're working on a system where it belongs to financial industry or some critical healthcare industry, they will not allow this to be enabled because they don't want any of their data to be sent to any external system. So in such case, you can just say no. But for now, if you want to allow them to collect the telemetry, you can just send it. See, okay, it is spending some time to load the interactive console here from the command line. Okay, while it is loading, I'll show you some more examples. Okay, let me go here. So from your command line, so if you want to create a virtual machine or if you want to create a storage account, just say Azure storage account followed AZ followed by whatever resource you want to create. And if you just enter it, it will give you the list of options. Okay, it says in order to create a storage account or if you want to list the storage account, so this is the command. Okay, so this is from the AI knowledge base. And if I just want to copy and run it, it will show me what are the different storage accounts in this particular okay, what are the different storage accounts in this particular subscription or tenant. So it says there are many different storage account, but it has given the output in a JSON template. See, these JSON template can be easily converted to a infrastructure as a code. If you want to use the JSON template, you can use it. But then for us, like it's not easy to read the data, or if you are planning to get a report, this particular output is not that good, right? So what you can do is you can try and convert this output in a tabular format, or you can let me just try that. So the output can be converted. You can just use -o or -output if you want to explicitly type it. You can just type output, or if you just type -o, both are going to give the output. So if I want to get this in a tabular format, or if I want to get it in a CSV format, I can just get it in a very organized way. So it will give me what are the different storage account I've got, and then what is the name of the storage account, and where exactly it is created, and what kind of options it is enabled. So you can also get a detailed output, and this is one such example. If I want to get it in a table separated value, I can also just change it. So this command line can help you with a lot of reporting and governance. And okay, this table separated value is little more jumbled. I think table itself is more clear. And if you want to get it in a JSON format, or if you want to get it in a YAML format, I think it supports YAML also. So YAML is mostly used nowadays in many automation, right? Infrastructure as a code. So if you can just copy the code for the storage account, and you can use this YAML output. Okay, so if an output is a very good argument. So whatever we are using with hyphen or a double hyphen, they are all called global argument. Okay, so now we are stuck with how to use the commands, right? I'm just not sure, because like we work between Linux and Windows, so different commands exist, but now these global arguments are common across any mode. So if I want to get some output converted into sorry, if I want to get the output converted into a easier reporting mechanism, I can just change it to table separated value or table or YAML or JSON or whatever method you want. And the next universal global argument is hyphen hyphen help. If I am stuck somewhere, okay, so now I want to create a storage account, but then I don't know what is the command that we used. So I can just say hyphen hyphen give me some help examples. Okay, it will give me a list of example. So these are the different commands I can use. So create, delete, list, show, update. So now the syntax for your Azure command line is AZ followed by Azure resource name, storage account, VM, key vault, web app, Cosmos DB, or whatever. Those are all the Azure resource name, and followed by the command. The command is list, create, show, whatever, right? This for an example, Azure storage account. You can use list or show or create or delete. So these are all the different commands that we are talking about. So it says you can use these many different commands. Now I got like in order to create a storage account, so create is the command that I got it now. So now if I just go Azure storage account create, and I don't know what to enter after this, I can just say hyphen hyphen help. So if you're stuck somewhere in between, so you will get the complete exact command that you want to type in. Okay, so that is the good thing with Azure global argument hyphen hyphen help. So this gives you complete help, the CLI command line reference documentation. Okay, and the beauty is it also lists all the arguments, commands, and the syntax that you want to use. Okay, now let's see. Okay, I've got this example now, Azure storage account with a particular thing. So very simple, right? Now if I want to create something like this, I can just go and manipulate my own thing. So with Azure command line, you can either use the shorter version, or you can also use the complete thing. For example, here it says hyphen n. Okay, hyphen n is nothing but name, right? You can just say hyphen hyphen name or hyphen n. Okay, both are supported. Similarly, if I want to mention the resource group name, I can just say hyphen g or hyphen resource group name. So this is an example. So now I can try and change it to match my requirement. This is hyphen l, which is location. Okay, let me duplicate it. So I want to create a storage account. I can just say stan storage account 001, and then resource group. I can use my resource group, or if I want to create something new, I can create it. Let me see what I have here. So go to home, go to storage, sorry, not storage account. Let me find out what are the resource groups I have got. So I've got multiple resource groups. So this is one example. So let me pick up this one. Okay, done. And if I want to create general purpose version 1, I can just say version 1, or if I'm going with version 2, this is fine. And if I want to create it in East US, I can just say East US, and then hyphen T account and all, it's not needed. Okay, so this is more than sufficient. So let me copy this and then try to run it. Let's see what outcome or output we are getting. Sorry, when we are using Linux and Windows, that's the problem. So now paste it. Let's see. So it is trying to create, and okay, yeah, it's running. Okay, fine. Now we are able to create a storage account. Similarly, if you want to create a VM, the same procedure you can follow. AZ VM space create and then hyphen hyphen help. It will give you the complete command and you can utilize it. Now it has created it. And if I want to go and say Azure storage account list and then output, if I want to see it in a table format, you can just see it. So now we should see three accounts. So I can see that stand storage account 001 has been created in East US and it is available. Okay, and it is part of the resource group RG-production stand 001. So this is how you can create, you can manage it. And if you want to just delete it, it's the same command, right? AZ storage account, delete hyphen hyphen help. So you just need to know the uh, exact command, and if you are stuck there you can go and find out. See, these are the global arguments which I was talking about. I'll come to the other global arguments which are available, which is very important because you might have to use it, you will be using it very commonly. Let me just put it here for now. Okay, let me just come to that. We will have to understand each of the global arguments. But in order to delete the storage account, so this is the command. So you just need to provide which storage account name followed by resource group name. This is enough. See, even, okay, so when you write script, you have to invoke these commands only. Script will not work just like that. Behind the scenes, only these commands and PowerShell commandlets will be used. So you have to be familiar with what command to use for what task that you are performing and what you want to do. Okay, for some reason I gave capital Y. It asked for small s, no, but then fine. Okay, now it has deleted it. You can just verify it. So we should find, okay, only two is there. So this is how you can create and manage. And if you want to play around with Azure Virtual Machine or Azure Web Application that we created last week, you can just say Azure Web App and then create followed by hyphen hyphen help. Okay, so it gives you simple option on how you can create a web application with the image from Docker or whatever you want to create. It gives you all different options and examples you can play around. So now let's discuss about the global argument before I show you one more interesting option. Okay, now the global arguments, as I told you, AZ hyphen verbose option. Okay, this verbose option, it gives you a lot of details. See, sometime back we created an account, right, and we did not get a lot of outputs when we did it. Okay, it just gave succeeded and we did not get a lot of information. But then if you want to get a lot of troubleshooting, or if you're doing a copy using Azure command, or if you're trying to create certain things and you want to get some outcome, so if this verbose will give you little more details, how much time it took to create, and what are the different stuffs, any errors that we got when we ran it. So it will give you little more additional details. So verbose is a command that prints additional useful information as part of your activity or resource creation. Let's see what exact stuff it gives you. So here it says the command ran in this much second and it initialized at this time, it invoked these things. And even if you look at the outcome here, it might show you a little more additional information. So it is very useful. It gives you little more additional options and outcome. So verbose is very important. And output we already saw, help we saw. And if in case you want to find out some additional options, or if you want to debug your command, you can also just give you debug. So this will go and give you debug information. Okay, what are the steps that it goes and runs? See, ideally it might not have got created because we already have an account, but see, it is going and showing you a lot of additional information. What are the different packages it is going and invoking? What exactly happens behind the scenes, what kind of software development kit, what kind of stuffs it is going and verifying. So all those information will be available. So this is very useful when you want to find, or when you want to check your script, you can add the hyphen debug to find out where exactly, what exact problem we are facing. So the hyphen debug and hyphen verbose is very useful global arguments when you want to debug a particular issue or a script. Okay, use those two options. Those are all very useful when it is when you write a script. Okay, so hyphen verbose hyphen debug, these two are very useful. So hyphen query is also okay, but then it is mainly to search and find out. Let's do the next thing. So in the command line, I install the interactive thing, right? Now, after I ran this command AZ interactive, okay, it has opened up a kind of terminal window, like an editor window, where I can just work on certain things, right? So after I ran this command, it opened up a interactive prompt. Now, the interesting thing is, see, if I want to do the same thing, storage account creation, I can just start typing and it automatically comes up with some help and information. So I can just say it, you can just go and select from the drop down. You don't have to search help or anything. Say after storage, these are all the possible options it is showing. So if I want to manage the storage account, it says, and if I click on space, it gives you all the different options from your help menu. Okay, so if I want to create, you can just say create, and after that it gives you what you have to enter, whether I want to enter the name or hyphen. You can use hyphen name or hyphen n. See, it gives you the option here, what is required, what is mandatory. So the ones which with asterisk, it is all mandatory. And also they have given you the complete example below. Okay, you don't have to memorize anything. See, the example is below and you just have to type whatever they have given on the top. You don't have to if I want to create stand storage account 003, and then which resource group, hyphen resource group RG hyphen. See, the interesting thing is it also picks up the resource group from my account. So these are all the two resource groups that are available with the name starting with RG in my account. Okay, and then I can just say space, and then it asks me which is the location. I will just say, see, it tells me these are all mandatory things which you have to definitely give. Location is, I will just say West US for an example. Okay, and then if I want to give the account type, I can give it, or else I can just leave it. Okay, hyphen account hyphen type. If I want to create it as a standard LRS account, I can just create it. So as simple as that. Okay, if you are into the Azure interactive mode, you get all the help automatically opened up, and you can start typing it, and it gives you different examples in order to complete that command. So no memorize, I mean, don't memorize anything. Nothing is needed. You just have to play around for some time, and it increase your experience on working from command line. So it has created it. Now we are done, and you can just go and say Azure storage account list. It gives you the complete list of storage accounts there. And if I want to get it in a tabular format, I can just say table. Okay, so now I can see storage account, stand storage account 003 is already created in West US, and it is available. Okay, that simple it is if you're using Azure Interactive. Now, still I want a little more help. I want to practice on some of the selective services. See, for example, I've got some resources here. Maybe I don't know what are the other resources that I have got. Maybe I've deleted the web application, but maybe I might have a virtual machine, right? See, for any of the Azure resources, if I want to practice myself on that particular resource type, just go to that resource, open it, and then on the extreme right, you can see that there is an option to open it in mobile. And after that, you also have an option called CLI/PowerShell. This is the most beautiful option for you to practice the resource creation, resource management from the command line. If I click on this, it gives you complete example on what you can play around. See, if I want to find out the list of IP address from that machine, it gives you the example of exact same system. Okay, you everything is pre-populated, the resource group, the name. If you want to create something, you want to stop something, everything is pre-populated. So whatever different activities that you can perform on that particular thing, you get the complete command. You can just copy it, you can just go to your command line, and then you can run it. Okay, the only thing is here, since you are in AZ mode already, you can just remove the AZ and then copy the remaining thing. Okay, so let me just put it here. Go to the beginning and then remove the AZ and then give whatever remaining stuff. So you can just get the details there, or if you want to do it from your command prompt, or if you want to run it in Power Cloud Shell, it's I mean, it's very easy. So if I just click on this run, it will automatically run in my Cloud Shell and it will give me the output. Okay, let's see. See, it is going and running the command on my Cloud Shell and it is waiting for the output, and it is showing me all the IP address and details of that particular system. So as simple as that. You don't have to know any commands. All the commands that you want to get the details of the system, or if you want to get any stuff, everything is available with example. Okay, both for PowerShell and the command line. So if I want to get the complete details of this machine, so it gives you the complete system information. Azure VM Show will give you the complete information. So I can also show it here. And if you want to view it page by page, you can also give more or less to get page by page output. So this is how you have to work with your command line. It has given you the complete information about your virtual machine. So you also have the options available, examples available on the same resource itself. And if you want to see all the command line commands for virtual machine, you can click on this option and it will give you every single command with an example on what you have to use. Okay, so you can use Azure CLI from your local machine by installing Azure CLI, and you can invoke the Azure interactive method through which you can just start typing and then it will help you to complete the command, or you can just come to your specific resource and it gives you all the different options. See, I think I have installed a specific extension on my system. Okay, I can just copy this. I remember I installed the custom script extension for the IAS. Okay, so if I go to extension, see, I could see what are the extension. Custom script extension is installed, right? If I want to say the same output, I can also get it here. Okay, I can just say list the extensions that is installed on my machine. So I want to just see it in a tabular format. I mean, it is only one, but still I want to see it in a table. See, custom script extension is installed on this particular Stan Management VM01. So whatever you want to see, you can get it from your command line. Whatever you are seeing graphically, every single thing, even beyond that, if you use debug command, it gives you what are the different activities or steps that it performs behind the scenes to help you troubleshoot and succeed with your progress. Okay, any questions on Azure CLI for now? Okay, even if you want to download some packages from the internet, not just the git command, even the curl command also will work. Okay, if you want to download something from a HTTP location, I can also try to check. Let's see what it says. I never tried that, but I'm just trying it. Okay, curl command will work. Wget command will work. If you want to download some packages from the internet, you can use the wget and you can download some scripts or packages from the internet directly to your cloud drive or the cloud shell drive. Okay, so try to practice Azure CLI, okay, which is very commonly used in Azure automation or Azure scripting. So when you write the script behind the scenes, you need Azure commands or Azure PowerShell commandlets to complete that activity. So any question before we move on to Azure PowerShell? Okay, so I'll take that as no. So let me move on to PowerShell. So PowerShell, unlike your commands are just single worded, or you just have to use this particular syntax: AZ followed by the resource name, and then you get things completed from there on. But then, unlike your command line command, PowerShell commands, or PowerShell, we call it as commandlets, right? And it has a specific format. So verb hyphen noun combination. So your command has to have two different element in your command. So we call it as commandlets. It will have a verb hyphen noun. So you know what it is, right? So verb stands for what kind of action you want to perform, whether you want to create it, whether you want to list it, whether you want to delete it. So all the actions. So this will have get, list, put, or whatever, right? Show, all these things are examples of this thing, verb. And then you have the noun. Noun is nothing but what is the resource you are planning to deal with: virtual machine or storage account. What are the different stuffs you want to deal with: Azure storage account or Azure VM. So these are all resource. So the commandlet will have two different elements. First one is your verb, and then the noun. And if you want to get all the different examples of Azure PowerShell, so I will just give you a link where you can get all the readily available tools. And again, if you want to download and install, you have to go to the same location, just download the Azure PowerShell. If you want to install it on Linux or Windows, you can install it from your gallery, or you can just download it locally to your machine. And there are certain prerequisite, so it needs PowerShell version 7 or higher. Okay, you can install it, or you can use it directly from your Cloud Shell, again like your Azure CLI. You can also install it directly from the PowerShell gallery, or you can also install it on your local machine using Microsoft PowerShell version 7 or higher. So let me just scroll down, and then let me download. Okay, go to this link where you can get all the latest versions. Okay, so they have this particular gallery module also, where if you want to install specific module for your Azure resource management, you can also get it from the packages from your PowerShell gallery. There are many modules that are available. So if you are expert in Microsoft PowerShell, you can also have your own uh, modules created. But for now, let's go and install the PowerShell tool first, and then we will go with the rest of the options. Okay, let's see. Okay, so one more link I want to, so there is the download link. Okay, let me install the module, copy it, go to your PowerShell. So you can install it from the gallery forcefully. It will take some time, okay, in order to install, load all the commandlets. So module is nothing but the list of commandlets that belong to a particular tool. Okay, if you are managing Office 365, or if you are managing Microsoft Azure and all those stuff, so you have a separate module. For Active Directory, you have a module. For SQL, Microsoft SQL, you have a separate module. So similarly, you have a module for Microsoft Azure, which is called AZ, same name that you have for your Azure command line, AZ, right? So you have the same standard. Earlier, maybe a couple of years back, we used to call it as AZRM, but then now they have removed that RM from the command. It's now only AZ package. So in order for all the Azure related commands to work, you just have to install this module or package, and all the Azure related commands will start working on this. Now, okay, one more thing I want to show you in GitHub. Okay, so we are already on the GitHub, right? So GitHub. So if you want to look at some documentation or some help files, I generally refer to Azure hyphen documentation hyphen PowerShell. So here is where I get all the samples. Okay, if I want to write something or if I want to automate something for a particular service, all the different examples are available for every single service, all different sample codes. In order to automate your different Azure services, you have every single code is available in your GitHub portal. So you don't have to start from the scratch is what I'm saying. Okay, so you already have sample codes, sample PowerShell script. You can just tweak it, modify it to match it with your environment. Okay, now let the module get installed and then I'll show you what are the different commands that you can execute. It's still going on. So there is one more method you can force it using -force command, but it's already installing. But if in case it did not progress, you can use -force command to forcefully install it. Okay, let it install and then I'll show you what are the different stuffs that we can do. Just a second. Okay, done. Okay, so it is almost done. Oh, okay. I've already used -force. Okay, which is okay. Okay, it will take a minute to allow the prompt to come back again. See, this thing is already pre-installed um, uh, on your Cloud Shell, right? If you want to work on the PowerShell mode, you can just switch back and then you can start working on it. So it is not that the PowerShell has got only Azure PowerShell command. Even the Azure CLI commands are available on your PowerShell. Okay, that I will show you quickly. So in your PowerShell prompt, even the AZ Azure command line, it's pre-installed. Okay, you don't have to install it. And if you want to clean up, see, it also gives you automatic completion option. If I start typing something, it is showing up what are the interactive options are by default available on your Azure Cloud Shell on the PowerShell prompt. You don't have to really start the interactive method. See, for example, I created storage account one at the last, and if I want to just delete that, I can just delete it. Okay, Azure storage account, delete. This is the name. Okay, storage group, sorry, resource group. So I'm just typing it by seeing the top output, enter. Fine. So Azure CLI is pre-installed, but then even the Azure command line stuff, it's also pre-installed. Okay, and as I told you, if you want to play around with certain things, don't memorize anything. Go to the resource that you are interested to work from the command line or PowerShell mode. Go to the extreme right, click on this CLI/PS, and then you have two different tabs here. So this is the command line examples and you have the PowerShell example. Now, if I want to start the VM or stop the VM, or if I want to get the details of a VM, I just have to copy the command and it will work here. So as I told you, it will have two sections. The verb-noun, verb is nothing but the describes the action, right? So get, stop, restart, start, list. So all these are actions. And then on which resource? Azure virtual machine. So get hyphen Azure virtual machine is the command let. And if I want to get the details about this virtual machine, I just have to copy this and then I can execute it. So just practice by copying the commands from that particular console, not just for this, right? Even if you go to any resource, if you go to storage account or resource group or any account, any particular resource, you get the exact same options, methods to play around. So go to the right and then click on the CLI PowerShell and then go to the PowerShell. And here, if I want to play around with my storage shares or list of file shares, I can just copy the list of file shares in the storage account with deleted file shares. If I want to get that soft deleted ones, I can use the second command. So all the different examples or outputs are also available. You can just copy paste and play around. Okay, this gives you easier. Okay, what it says, get a just there is no shares in that particular storage account because we did not get create any file share in this storage account. Rather, we created a file share on this one, I guess. Okay, so here if I go and run that command, it will give me the list of shares in that particular storage account. So I want to run the PowerShell command. Go to the Azure storage share, copy the command, go and execute it. The same command you can execute from your local machine also after you install the Azure PowerShell module. Okay, so now you can see that it lists down the file share that has been created for storing my Cloud Shell image. Right, so this is the kind of command. So every PowerShell command will have a verb hyphen noun combination. So that's how you do it, right? If you want to play around or get some details, you just say get hyphen process, and then it gives you the system from where you can get the complete performance process details. Okay, get is the verb, and then noun is what you want to get. I want to get the process details. See, you can see what are the different stuffs which are currently active. Sometimes your Cloud Shell might be over utilized and there might be slowness, and if you want to fix it, see behind the scenes on the back end you can see .NET is running and the node JS is running, and these are all the stuffs. You can just use the commands to kill them, or you can stop certain things. Even if you want to start particular service on this particular machine, you can go and mention the service and you can start it. And if you want to specifically deal it with a particular VM, it also gives me an example. See, hyphen computer name, you can just give the computer name, and then you can see what are the different processes and stuff from that particular computer. So you can just handle sorry can just handle whatever you want. And if I want to get the Azure subscription, I can just say Azure subscription. And if I want to get the tenant details, every single thing you want to get from the um, graphical interface, you can get it from your Azure CLI as well as from your Azure command line. So with that, so we are almost 7 o'clock. I think we will take a break here. When we come back, we will start discussing about templates. So the same exact commands and stuff, you can, once after you install it, you can start running this from your local machine. So let's say this command, right? Get Azure storage. First, you have to log in. So in order to log in, you have to use Azure, login hyphen Azure account, and then you'll be able to log in first. And then you can see that the command has got is there installed. And the interesting part with your local PowerShell, it asks me, okay, what is the next thing I have to give? It is asking me what is the resource group. So I have to give the resource group. So indirectly, it is asking me what are the different mandatory stuffs that is needed to complete that command. So I have to give the storage resource group name. Once after I give the resource group name, it will prompt me for the account name. So that is what it is going to happen now. See, that is the beauty of the local PowerShell. So you just run the command and it will ask you what are the different values you need to supply for each of your sub commands or the parameters, and then it will complete the command. Okay, that easy it is. So only thing is you need to practice Azure CLI and Azure command line, sorry, Azure PowerShell for a few resources, and then you will get very familiar. And you will also start receiving some errors, and then it gives you some learning curve. You can keep executing commands, commandlets. You can get better only by practice. There is no alternative for that. And as a DevOps engineer, a lot of organizations are looking for skills around command line Azure CLI as well as especially around PowerShell. So if you enhance your skills around this, so your demand increases. Okay, so when we come back, we will discuss the next option, which is nothing but template based management of your environment. So we have just seen these three options so far. Any questions around Cloud Shell, PowerShell, and Azure CLI? So we are going to continue with template option now.
Understand, can
Yeah.
we use the PowerShell to convert an on-prem database to Azure?
From the command line, see if there is a
Not
method.
command line, using the PowerShell script.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If there is a command line that is readily available, you can do it. Or else, as I told you, you might have to write your own module to do it. So, is there a method that is available in Azure portal to do that? Whatever activity you are asking, if it is
Yeah,
there,
that is, yeah.
then obviously from the command line there will be a equivalent. Even from the PowerShell command line, there will be a equivalent for sure. If it is
Okay.
feasible on the portal, then obviously it will be available in the commandlet as well as in the command version. But if it is not feasible on the portal level, then there are less chances. But there are certain options which is available from the command line, which is not available in the GUI option. There are many such stuffs. But for now, yeah, just practice it. Okay, if you don't have access to install in your local machine, you can use the Cloud Shell for practicing both Azure CLI and PowerShell. You have option to switch between each other, and Cloud Shell is going to be a very big value add for the administrators and the DevOps engineers to manage the environment in an efficient way. So when we come back, we will start discussing our own infrastructure as a code, and then we'll discuss JSON and the ARM template. Okay, so let me stop the recording for a few minutes. So the term IAC is very popular in DevOps methodology, right? Anything that you want to create, either public cloud or on-premises VMware environment or private cloud. So now, in order to make the deployments easier, in order to make the deployments repeatable, what we generally do is we are creating the infrastructure, either it is a virtualization or a public cloud or private cloud environment. We started creating stuffs using the templated approach, templatized approach or template approach, where if you are doing it, you can create repeatable infrastructure, and there won't be any human errors because we are following um, the same code, we are using the same template, and it creates exact same infrastructure as you have in your non-production to the production environment. See, generally this is where the challenge used to be earlier, right? When we have multiple environments, so people used to create it in the portal, some create it from the command line, and then the environment will be different. So now, if you're using the same template and code, you'll have a consistent environment for your development, non-production, and the production environment. Right? There will not be any different change. And the templatized approach, we are generally using. There are different templates that are available, and most commonly used templates are YAML these days, for sure. And then you can also use JSON template, and there are providers tools like HashiCorp configuration language. This is the template that is being used by the most popular Terraform tool, which is a multi-cloud management tool, right? That is another advantage that you get from Terraform. You can use the same stuff for on-premises, public cloud, and Azure, AWS, or whatever you want to manage from a code, from a repeatable infrastructure as a code. You can go for it. Now, this can be automated using CI/CD pipelines. The deployment, the step-by-step manual process has been completely changed into fully automated process using this infrastructure as a code. So earlier we used to do all these steps, either it is creating a system or creating a web application. So we used to have follow steps one by one, but now we have got this particular code. So earlier, Microsoft, they leveraged these particular configuration language to create the ARM templates. It is still being heavily used by Microsoft, and now Microsoft has come up with a new language of their own, which they call it as Bicep. Okay, so Bicep, or you can just call it as Azure Bicep. So this is Microsoft Azure centric infrastructure as a code, and they generally call this the template or the medium that we use for creating as a domain specific language or a DSL. Okay, but then this one, Microsoft Azure Bicep, is actually domain specific. It is purpose built for managing your resources on Microsoft Azure. Whereas the advantages of going with Terraform or third party tools, it is not specific to a particular cloud. And the problem with that is you might have to understand a little bit about how HashiCorp configuration language work, but still it is all very much in line with your YAML or JSON code. So between YAML and JSON, there is not much difference. You have the open curly brackets, and that will not be there in your YAML. YAML is more user friendly. So whatever the templates or languages that we are talking about, especially the YAML and the JSON, they are all open standard format. That is the reason most of the configuration management or infrastructure deployment. So we are talking about infrastructure deployment here, right? So the infrastructure provisioning or the deployment is being used by, I mean, you can still use YAML or JSON, whatever language you are familiar with. Both YAML and JSON are open standard format, and they are all human readable text. Okay, so there is no programming skills needed. There is nothing, no, there is zero skills that you need on writing a program here. It is just a human readable text formatted template where you can just write it and read it in a much easier way. And very similar to your PowerShell, this also works with objects. So this transmits all the resources and data that you want to create as a data object, so you can use it. And the beauty of it, like everything in the template will be in a key value format or key value pair, where you will just create the resources in a tagging structure. Okay, I'll show you how what are the different stuffs that are involved, and how do we go about it. So when you want to create this template, there is a structure that Microsoft has laid out, and you have to follow that exact structure when you want to write this code. Either it is a JSON based ARM template or a Bicep or a Terraform, you might have to follow a particular structure for your infrastructure as a code template. So we call it as IAC, or let's say template structure. Okay, in your template, you should ideally have few segment. Okay, don't worry about this theoretical part. It's pretty easier, pretty straightforward to understand and create it. Only thing, again, practice is what is needed. Okay, so in the structure, generally when you go and write a document, okay, you need to have a schema. What are the different content you're going to have? What are the different elements that you want to have? So it is the skeleton of your template. Then whenever you are writing a documentation, okay, so what you generally do, you go and create a versioning control on your topmost section, right after your purpose of the document, or after you have the version details will be captured when this file was created. Because when you create multiple versions, and automatically you get confused, okay, which is the latest template, which one we created recently. So you can go and check the date modified and all, but then you need to have the versioning on within your template, so that you can identify which file you have to refer to in order to get the latest version. Version control is very important. Either you do SOP or documentations or any KB article, you need to have the latest version. Then you can write whatever you want under your description. This is a free text field where you can just go and type whatever you want to make the people understand to make the purpose clear for the people who are going to use it. Okay, so what is the intention of this template? What is the stuff that the template is going to do? So you can write any content there. It's a free text field. You can type whatever you want, and you can make the purpose of the template very clear. So these are all not mandatory stuffs, but these are all good to have things, so that you know which is the latest version, what is the purpose, and all those things. Now coming to the mandatory fields. Okay, so when you want to create something, you need to pass on the parameters that you want to work. For example, the stuff that you want to work in your Azure platforms, and maybe like there are certain things which are variables. For example, within your virtual machine or within your virtual network, a lot of things might change. For example, you might increase your subnet, you might have specific values for your storage account. So all these things, you'll have some variables that you will pass on. For example, storage account type, or what is the redundancy type you want, what is the tier you want. So all these are kind of variables. And comes the resources, what kind of resource you want to have, whether you want to have a virtual machine or a network interface card or a network security group, public IP address. So every single thing that you can create in Azure is a resource, okay, which you can create as a separate entity. You call it as resource, and you can keep adding more metadata. So whichever is not coming under your parameters and variables, you can keep adding additional data of data, which we call it as metadata. And if you want to have a kind of clear output, okay, what are the different stuff which got created, what is the IP address details, or what is the name of the resource, how much time it took. So you can have a output for your template. Now keep this template structure in mind, okay. I'll show you how the template looks like, and I will relate it here. Okay, so these are all the mandatory ones. So these are all something which are good to have, optional stuffs. Like the output is also kind of optional. Now let's take a small example of a template, and then I will explain it. Go to your Azure portal. Okay, here, let's say I want to create a template. Okay, so if I go to this templates, okay, so you can see that there are many different sample templates which are available. I will also show you where exactly you can look for that. So here, if I click on this ARM template, currently it has got this default structure. Okay, what the structure is saying, where exactly the template is stored, and where exactly, what exactly is the content version. Sorry, just a second. So it just needs this element alone: schema, content version, parameters, and then resources. And with this you will be able to create it. So whatever the additional stuffs, it depends on resource to resource. Okay, see, just for an example, I want to show a custom template, or the template that we already have. Okay, go to deploy a custom template. So here is where you can learn this templatizing concept very easily. So Azure Resource Manager template, it's mainly for automating the deployment of the resources. And whatever, as a beginner, okay, to infrastructure as a code, if you're a beginner, then you can start with this customization option, or deploying the custom template, and then you will start learning things step by step. See here, if you want to build your own template in the editor, this will open up the editor window for you, and you can start writing the template here. Or else, if you want to take one of the template from this quick start, or if you want to take it from this particular list, you can also take it. So this particular list comes from Microsoft Azure native template deployment. Let me show you the GitHub. So Azure GitHub quick start template. If you go here, you can get every single sample for your ARM template. Okay, so for every single resource, be it virtual machine or any different service you want to play around, you have the 100 blank template, and you also have some more templates which are available here, the quick starts. Okay, within this quick start, you have every single service. Okay, it can be your storage account or virtual machine, or whatever you are very familiar with. Take that resource first. Okay, if you are familiar with compute, take that compute, or if you are familiar with storage, just pick that storage and play around, and then you will start understanding it. Now if I go to this Microsoft storage, okay, I'll show you. I'll just pick this link for you to refer, so that you are not searching for it. Okay, so under this, see for example, if I want to create a storage file share or if I want to create a storage account, so it gives me the complete template structure. Okay, so if I want to create a storage account, just click on this Azure Quick Start article and it will take me to the template here, and it will show me what are the different stuff that are involved in your ARM template. So just scroll down, you will get the complete data, or else there is another option. Just go here, scroll to the top. Okay, so here you will have the Azure deploy.json. If you click on this file, it will give you the complete code for your creation. And in this code, the interesting thing is you will have a lot of stuffs which you can customize. Okay, that's why we call it as custom template. See here, in a particular organization, if you want to restrict them from selecting certain option, for example, I've got multiple different values here. Okay, I can either go for local redundant storage or zone redundant storage, geo and stuff. For example, if you in your organization, if you want to only limit the template to allow creation of only local and zone, if you want to avoid the costly ones like GRS, you can remove these options from your template and you can create it. See, if you look at the template structure, it has got the schema, yes, and then it has got the content version, yes, and then it has got the parameter section. Okay, now, so reading it in a Excel file or reading it in a notepad file, things might not be that easier or that good looking. So in order to make this little more interesting, what you can do is you can install the Visual Studio Code on your sorry, on your local machine. So even if I go to notepad, it is not looking that good. Okay, so same applies to your notepad plus plus also. Okay, even if I use notepad plus plus, I might get a very similar experience, only not that different. Okay, only thing is it gives me a little more readable, it's a little more readable in a way with different lines and stuff, and also it gives me some indications. But then if I have the Visual Studio Code installed on my local machine, so it's a free installable, right? You don't have to really get any license or stuff. So most of the DevOps engineers, they use the Visual Studio Code for developing most of the infrastructure as a code template that they want to have. So it is available for different operating system flavor, Linux, Windows, and Mac. So you can run the one for your Microsoft Windows. Okay, fine. Fine. Let this get installed. See, once the tool is installed, you can easily relate what is the template structure that I was explaining to you a while back. So let this come, okay? And then while it is loading, what I can, okay, it's done, right? Let's not confuse much. Let's let this get opened. See, if I just paste the code here, let me just open it. And also this Visual Studio code gives you a lot of extensions. If you want to directly manage Azure deployment, it gives you a lot of different modules here. All the Azure tools you can install. If you want to install Azure storage, resource management, app service, so you can also do a lot of things. You can directly deploy from your Visual Studio Code itself by adding these extensions. But then let's not get into that for now. Let me create a new file, and it is asking what kind of file it is. I can just say it is a JSON file. Okay, it's a built-in option. I can go and load it. I can just give it a name, Azure Storage Account Creation, create this file, and then I can paste it. Now, if you look at this particular content, it will be much more easier to understand. See, how do I say that? See, if I just go to the top and I have option to see the sections involved. If I click on this, okay, it gives me the complete code. Okay, if I expand this, it says what is the next section here. So I have the metadata sections, I have the parameter section, I have the resource section, I have the output. Now you see the exact template structure that I was explaining in the Excel sheet, right? In your template, you will have schema followed by version, followed by metadata, parameters, resources, and outputs. So not outputs are not mandatory, but if you want to see the details around what is the storage account name it got created, which region it got created, you can add some outputs, okay, the values that you want to see as an output. Okay, and this is the resource section where you are creating an Azure storage account. So what exactly you are creating? We are creating virtual machine, or whether we are creating storage account, or whether we are creating a web application. So we are talking about what exact resource we are creating here, and what is the resource version. See, if you are familiar with your graphical interface, this is exactly same that you do in your graphical interface. See, if I go to my Azure login, and if I want to just create a storage account on my home screen, on the mandatory screen here, this is the exact same option that we see here, right? If you scroll down, this is what I'm seeing there in my code. If I just have the code next to each other, you'll understand it. See what it is asking. It is asking what is the storage account name. That is what you ask here. What is the location, region? So that is what you give it here. And what is the version that you want to use, version 1 or version 2, and what is the type of redundancy you want, what is the SKU. Okay, so this is exactly the same thing that you give under the resources, under the mandatory screen, under the basic screen. Whatever you want to cover, use it under your resources section. Okay, and then the remaining additional elements you can pass on with your parameters. For example, if I don't want the team to use the higher end option, I can just limit that in the code here. I'll show you how it works. Let me minimize, and then let me go here to the console. So I can just edit it whatever I want. I can fork it to my local machine, or I can do one thing. Go to my deploy a custom template option. In this console, let me see if I have that quick template. What I was trying to edit, I was trying to edit storage account, right? Create storage account. Not this. See, there are different numbering along with the code. Okay, so the number here, it refers to, let me show you that first. See, in your template, you have different numbers, 100, 200, and so on. So 100 is the basic one, which has got only one or two resources in one resources involved, but 200 is little complex where two resources are involved, and higher the numbers, higher the number of resources involved in your setup. See here, I want to use the quick start Microsoft storage account create. That is what I was showing you, right? Under the quick start, under the quick start, this one, Microsoft storage, this one, and under that, storage account create. This is the same exact thing I was selecting here. Quick start, Microsoft.storage, storage account create. And if I want to edit it on your editor, what I can just say, I can just select the template and deploy it. I don't want to do that. Instead, I want to do some editing here. So I don't want to have Visual Studio Code as a mandatory thing. You can edit whatever you want here. And if you look at the left side option, you see what are the different stuffs involved. You have parameters, you have variables, and resources. Now, this is where you get to really understand what is the difference between resources and parameters. And resources, it talks about only the storage account and the storage account name. So storage account is the resource that we are going to create, and storage account name is what we create under resources. Under the parameters, these are the stuffs which are we need to specify. What is the location, what is the account type, and what is the storage account name. And just for an example, as I told you, if I want to restrict the people to use only few option, I will just remove this. I will just give whatever options that I want to allow them to create. See, just for my understanding, I just want to use premium LRS, premium ZRS, and premium standard ZRS. These are the only three options that are allowed. And generally in your template, see, some people might not want to choose certain things and they want to go with organization default standard. Okay, so that is what we call it as default value. So in your template, whenever you see something default value, that will be auto selected. Okay, default value is what we generally use to select a particular automatic things, and these are all the allowed values. What are the different options we can choose from the drop down? If you're not choosing that, then automatically it will fall into standard local redundant storage. Similarly, whatever in your code you are seeing, you will have a default value, and you will whatever Microsoft prefers at the default location, you can just give a default location. You can give a default value for your storage account type and so on. Now with this one, I want to save this, and then let's try. So now if I go to the drop down here, I will only see three options, right? Premium LRS, premium ZRS, premium standard ZRS. And what happened to this one, standard LRS? I have removed that option, and that's the reason there is no default value. See, the template has specified a default value which is not present in the list of allowed values. So even if you have something which is not in your list of allowed values, it will ignore that. Okay, so generally you need to have something from this list only. So if I want to edit the template again, you can edit it anytime. And if I want to just give standard ZRS, automatically this will become the default option here. So if I go to the template, see, it has become a default value. Automatically it has picked up the region. And if I want to select the resource group, I can select it, or you can specify that in your parameter. Now, if you want to see this in a visualized way, like your ARM, sorry, not ARM, your cloud configuration template or designer, right? Microsoft Azure also has got a visualization screen where you can go and find out what is the architecture, what it is going to create, and so on. So now it is a straightforward thing where you are going to just create a storage account. But then if you have multiple resources involved, it will show you a diagrammatic view of what are the different resources it is going to create. Now, with this template, if I just go and say create, it will go and create a resource name. But if I want to change the name or something, you can change it. But then I'll just try to deploy the content using the template and then see what happens. Okay, let me create it. So it is going to create a new storage account using the option that I have specified. It will create it as a standard zone redundant storage, and it will pick up the name that it uniquely assigns from the template format. But if you want to give those things, you can give it. Now with the Azure ARM template, what you can do is you can also give certain additional inputs. These are all something which we generally use. If you want a specific task to wait, you can say this particular parameter or resource is dependent on another resource. You can just add that, and you can also pass on some conditions on your template stating that if this particular thing succeeds, create it, or if this doesn't succeed, just roll back and complete it. And you can also, if you are creating multiple resources for multiple different applications or project, you can have a mapping there. And if you want to create multiple different things in a parallel way, if you want to fast track your creation mode, you can just select either parallel mode or serial mode. With that, you will be able to quickly create stuffs if you are selecting parallel mode, but certain things you have to create it in a serial way. Like for example, if you want to create a storage account, first you have to create a resource group, and then you need to create the storage account. So it has to go in a serial way. And if you are going to do the same thing for multiple different stuffs, for example, if you want to create 3 different virtual machines or 4 different web application, you can just give them copy number. You can just say copy and then followed by the number. That will help you to reduce the length of the code. Okay, let's see if the template is getting created. Go to the resource, and you will be able to find out that it has created a storage account. Sorry, it has created a storage account, and it has created as a standard ZRS in East US location. Perfect. So this is how you can deploy things from your template, and in your infrastructure as a code, you just have only few sections. And if you want to understand it in a very um, clear way, install Visual Studio Code, and that will help you. And from here itself, you can install the different resource module, and that will help you to kind of show you what are the different mandatory things and stuffs that is needed when you write the template or code. So Microsoft is kind of getting better on this. They have come up with their own native language, which is more easier to read. See here, there is nothing to um, read as a programming language. It is just a plain text. So whatever you are giving, it is like a key value pair. Okay, so everything is a key value pair here, and everything is human readable. There is nothing for the machine to understand here. So it's a human readable thing. And the biggest difference between these things, right, either it is bicep or ARM template. So these are all stuffs which is native to Microsoft, and it can be used only for automating the deployment of the infrastructure only on Microsoft Azure platform. So the other one, Terraform, this is more popular because it is multi-cloud, and even it is hybrid cloud to certain extent. So you have a lot of modules and packages where you can go and deploy resources, and you can have even Terraform has got integration to the code editors, like how I showed you, right? Visual Studio has complete uh, support for Terraform modules also, like how you have support for ARM template module, you also have complete thing. And Bicep, this doesn't support on premises, whereas Terraform, it supports on premises, AWS, GCP, or any cloud for that matter. So this is only specific to Microsoft Azure. So that's the reason many of them are learning Terraform, which is again an open source product, where it's actually the templates and modules are open source, but HashiCorp is the company which owns it. And if in case you want to have some new additions, or you want to fix the bug, we need to have dependency on the community team, and it is multi-cloud and multi-platform. But whereas in Microsoft Azure ARM template or Bicep, the advantage is that it automatically gets updated with newer version by Microsoft, and you don't have to wait. Some customer, if they have some issues or bugs, it is native to Microsoft Azure, and whatever issues that they face, everything will get fixed for every single customer. So you don't have third-party dependency when you are using ARM templates or Bicep as a infrastructure as a code. But when you are using Terraform, you have a third-party dependency, and you also have to learn. There is a learning curve involved. And this also uses the native JSON or the YAML file, which is very easy to learn. There is nothing much here. So just a second. Any questions so far? And I know most of you know that JSON stands for JavaScript object notation, and YAML stands for yet another markup language. So these two are open source tools, and open standard format. It is human readable, and the structure is looking like this. And as I told you, sometimes you might have to write conditions and mappings and dependency, but it's not the case for every single stuff. One second, let me reshare my screen. I'll try to open up a PPT which I have created for this. But meanwhile, yeah, if you have some questions, you can ask it. I know, like command line and templates are a little, I won't say boring thing, but then it takes some time for you to practice. Without practice, you cannot get better in this. And again, it is a mandatory stuff for everyone to learn it. Okay, just give me a second. I will find out what I've created.
Stan,
Yeah. Go ahead.
is the
Uh,
Terraform and the ARM template is the same? It is only to provision
Yeah,
the
it's
infrastructure.
yeah. Mainly, it is for provisioning the infrastructure. Certain things you can do. See, for example, Ansible, we call it as configuration management tool. But then it can also
Mhm.
do some level of infrastructure provisioning. So that's the thing. Okay, so certain tools they want to expand into other areas. So primarily, it is mainly used for infrastructure provisioning, but then it's not limited to that. You can also do some level of configuration management, and you can do some level of standardization also.
Suppose using this template, okay, we want to create like an multiple resources, like a 50 resources.
Mhm.
So how exactly we can do this in this ARM templates?
Let me show you that, just a second. There was another question. Yeah, you can go ahead with that.
No, nothing this time. Today only understand the code itself. What is what?
Got it, got it. Yeah. So, but then see, now most of the organizations are insisting in the templatized approach, or but then in order to work on this, you need to know what are the different components, parameters, and attributes involved. Without that practical knowledge, see, I see people are directly jumping into learning Terraform or tools like Ansible. It is okay, but then see, if you don't know what are the different Azure resources involved, what are the different options involved, you cannot. You will not be comfortable there unless you have a graphical creation experience. So that's where you need to complete Azure Administrator or AWS SysOps Admin before you go and learn Ansible or Terraform. So now coming to the ARM template, the deployment of infrastructure as a code. Okay, so obviously I told you it is very simple, easy to read. It's an open standard format, human readable text, and it transmits objects. And now one of you asked about how do we streamline the creation, right? So this is where you can use the copy count option. So if you want to create 3 storage account or 3 virtual machine or 3 web application, instead of having the code for 3 different storage account, you can just say I want to copy the same exact characteristics and create 3 different count of storage account. So instead of creating 100 virtual machine, you can just say 100 count of storage machines, and automatically it will have a indexing number that will add 1 2 3 number on the exact end. So copy section is where you try to reduce the length of the code or the template. Now, as I told you, you can also use the serial mode or parallel mode. If all the 3 storage account can be created in parallel, you can also use mode parallel. If you want one by one the resources to be created, you can also use the serial mode. Now the condition is again mostly used where if you want to wait for a particular resources, for example, if you want the virtual machines to be created first, then the target group, then the load balancer, you can just say these things are conditioned, that these things have dependency on the other stuffs before it gets created. Now when you go and write the parameter, the problem with parameter section is that, see, when you are having something in your parameter section, the entire code has to run multiple times. So the parameter section has to be used in a very smarter way. So when I say smarter way, reduce the stuffs which increases the length of the code, or which increases the length of the time that the code is running. Now what they are saying is minimize the use of parameter as much as possible. Instead, use the variables or properties, because when you are using that code for deployment, if you are putting something in the parameter section, the code will run the entire stuff and then it will come back to parameter again. But then if you are using the variables or the attributes section, it will fasten the time of deployment. So use the variables or use the literal values instead of going with the parameter. And generally with the parameters, you have to use the camel casing. I'm not sure you are aware of the camel casing. See, if you look at here, most of the things are camel cased. So if you're talking about, these are all 2 different English words, but then how they have merged them together using camel casing. So in between the 2 words, they have used the capital V to distinguish that these are 2 different words. Similarly, if you look at here, storage account name. So these are all 3 different words in fact, but how they have merged them together. So they have merged them together and they have used the first character, first word, the first character in the next word to be uppercase, and then they are having a this is what they call it as camel casing. Okay, so in order to differentiate multiple words, they use uppercase in between. Okay, so they generally use camel casing in your code. Camel casing is nothing but you cannot enter the 3 words separately. Instead, you need to enter it in a single word. And what they do is they just denote the different words by using uppercase for the next set of words. Okay, so you will have a lowercase and uppercase combination, but the next word will be denoted in a uppercase. So that's what they call it as camel casing. And again, they are saying use parameters for settings that vary according to the environment. For example, in your non-production environment, if you want to give different stock keeping unit like local redundant storage, and for your production environment, if you want to give geo redundant storage, always use the parameter section. So those kind of things you have to smartly use. If you want to give different size, different capacity for different environment, you can use the parameter section, obviously. And use the parameters for resource name that you want to easily identify. So always have a proper naming, and always give a proper description, not just on the code level. Even for your each and every single parameter, you can provide a separate description. See, if you look at here, you can give a description here also for each of your parameters. So utilize that option to specify what is the purpose, why you have chosen that location, what is the reason for that particular choosing that particular type. So use the description as much as possible, even in every single parameter, so that whoever is using that code, or in the future, you also think that you are going to read it from a different company, right? When you join a new company, they might have a code. So better the descriptions, it is easier to understand why they have chosen it and what is the reason behind organization going with that particular type or SKU. So you will understand the policy that the organization has insisted. Okay, so this is on a very high level. So for your question, you can use the count within your copy section, and the count attribute in order to reduce the length of the code. Okay, again, all these things, template or Azure CLI or Cloud CLI or the Cloud Shell or the PowerShell, I can just explain, or I can tell you the different methods through which you can quickly learn it. Okay, but then there is zero thing to memorize. Okay, don't memorize anything. Just practice, keep on practicing stuff. You will automatically get comfortable on all these options. Especially start using Azure Interactive mode, and then use local PowerShell, so that things get easily understandable. As I told you, in local PowerShell, it gives you the automatic option. Whenever you run some command, it will tell you what are the different stuffs it is looking for. And whenever you are running Azure Interactive mode, it will give you automatically. See, if I want to create web app, it will give you, it manages web app and what are the different options that you can use. If I just use space, it gives you different option. Just give create, and this is how you can easily learn what are the different commands, arguments, attributes that you have for different stuffs. This is very, very important topic. The more you practice, the sooner you can be part of a site reliability engineering team or a DevOps engineering team. Okay, any questions on these topics? Okay, a lot of things to digest, right? A lot of things to consume. Yeah, go ahead.
And how you integrate with the Git,
Okay, see,
this code?
yeah, see, Git, you can push it. Okay, let me show you this. I mean, it needs some time to explain you, but then I can show one quick example. See, there is nothing to do with Microsoft Azure and GitHub. There is no separate integration needed. See, for example, I have a code here. Okay, let's say I want to deploy this into Microsoft Azure. Scroll down, you just click on the deploy to Azure option. It automatically starts deploying in your Azure account. That easy it is for your GitHub. But then I know your question, you're talking about having a local Git and then downloading it or forking it to your system and then modifying it and then creating a resource. But then here you have a much easier option for your all the different templates. They are giving you a easier option, deploy to Azure, and then you just have to change a few things and it deploys the resource whatever you want. As simple as that. So it is already linked directly to GitHub. Microsoft has purchased GitHub, right? So there is no additional steps involved in order to integrate it.
Suppose you create a script and I want to push it to my GitHub. So how we can do that?
Okay, that is
From the here.
that is part of my Azure DevOps session.
Okay.
Okay, I'll show you how exactly we need to follow the. I mean, because I have to explain about Git, I need to explain about GitHub.
No, Git.
Yeah.
Okay, just you can show me how exactly do in a high level. I don't know in depth.
No worries. Okay, so you will definitely learn that from me in Azure DevOps course. So here you don't have to get into that for now. So it's mostly use. I mean, it's a good thing to know. I know, like I'm very much happy to explain it, but not now. Okay, it takes some time. If I start explaining it, it is going to confuse the people more. Today we have learned few new things: Cloud Shell, Azure CLI, PowerShell, and the template that we use for creating the resource. We have 4 different methods or tools which you can use for making things in an automated way, or creating stuff in Azure in an automated way. If you have questions in this section, yeah, please let me know. So I have a 40-hour session where I will explain about GitHub, how you can integrate with Azure GitHub's, Azure DevOps related tool set, and you will learn in a very detailed way. But for now, these are the stuffs. Okay, so try to learn these things, and then I can also, okay, let's not confuse. Okay, I can show it on this particular machine, but again, I have to disturb that other person where I have to log in with this Yahoo mail ID. So if there is no question, yeah, just practice these things, okay, and then come back with any questions you might have.
Stan, this is not a question. The fast video I cannot see on YouTube. You are uploading or any specific name?
Okay, but then so as I told you, there was some challenge
Yeah,
with
yeah,
my
correct, correct.
primary
After that,
site,
I cannot
and
see the old video only displaying.
okay, let me give you the link. So if you go to my Azure with Stan YouTube channel, and
Correct.
within that you will see Microsoft Azure in English. Just a second. Copy the link. I've just given it in the chat. Let me know if you're able to access it. Just click on the link. You should be logged in with your Gmail ID that you have provided. I'll stop the recording in the interest of